Thank you all for joining us. If you haven't already, go ahead and open up that chat window and let us know who you are, where you're coming to us from. I'd like to also point out, and I'm going to mention it a couple other times throughout our time together today, but down at the bottom, you've got a little Q&A button down there. If you click on that, you're going to be able to submit a question. We ask that you get those questions in early if you can. The earlier that you get them in, the more likely you'll be to be able to have that answered. We also might go to you to ask your question. And finally, as people submit questions, you're going to be able to see what those questions are. You'll see a little number pop up so you know questions have come in. And there's going to be a button next to questions, a little thumbs up button. If a question appears that really resonates with you, go ahead and hit that button. If we run out of time or we don't have enough time to get to every question live, then we'll make sure to get to those that are kind of resonating with the most people. I'm also going to make an offer that I always should clear ahead of time, and I never ever do with our hosts and our panelists. So, Desan, Gabby, Latasha, I'm telling you now, if there are questions that we don't have an opportunity to get to today, we'll make sure to get those to the appropriate people at the STEM Push organization or to our panelists so they can kind of quickly answer them offline. And in the follow-up emails that you get after the session itself, we'll have those answers in there. So we're going to go ahead and get started now with all that housekeeping done. So welcome, everyone. You know, in the few months since the Supreme Court's ruling that deemed consideration of race illegal in the college admission selection process, there's been really an increased attention to the question of who gets into college and why. This isn't a new question, and it's one that STEM Push and the STEM Push team has been working on and studying for the last decade. Over the past 4 years, the STEM Push Network fostered this really incredible network of over 40 pre-college STEM programs who've come together around the common aim of increasing the number of Black, Latina, and Indigenous students who enroll and persist in STEM throughout undergraduate study. This work is currently funded by the National Science Foundation as an alliance through the Eddie Bernice Johnson Includes program. And you can get more information at info@stempushnetwork.org. In fact, I mentioned before that there's going to be an opportunity to ask questions. What we're not going to get into today live is how do I get my specific program involved? So if that's a question that you have, go ahead and use that email address. I see STEM Ecosystems drop that email address in the chat. Go ahead and use that email address, and we'll make sure that you get a response and that you get the information you need. Because let me tell you something, and I'm not part of the STEM Push Network directly. I don't work for STEM Push or PIT or any of those organizations. This is something you want to be a part of. So if you have a STEM out of school time program or something else related that you think fits the bill here, absolutely reach out. Today, we're going to learn about ways that community-based educators are trying to level the playing field in STEM education for Black, Latino, and Indigenous students, and how you might find your place in this work. We're going to start with a little bit of an introduction for STEM Push. I know some of you know all about it, some of you don't, from Desan Davis, a member of the research team. Then we're going to introduce our panelists to speak to pre-college STEM programs and the collective work from their unique perspective as former pre-college STEM program student, a pre-college STEM program coordinator, and a pre-college STEM program lead and ecosystem level liaison within the STEM Push network. Desan Davis, she is a research associate for STEM Push, which is run through the University of Pittsburgh. She came to this work from most recently working in the science outreach and informal education space, including running a summer high school research program. Prior to that, Desan was a teacher of middle and high school science and earned a PhD in chemical biology. She worked to expand equity and inclusion in science education spaces, interrogating what it means to teach or to learn or to do science in ways that ultimately allow more learners to thrive. Desan, I'm so excited to talk to you today. I love learning from you. Can you start off by telling us just a little bit about, I keep saying this phrase, pre-college STEM programs, but what does that mean? And what does STEM Push mean? And how do they define that phrase?
Thanks so much, Jeremy. And it's great to be here. At STEM Push, we define pre-college STEM programs as established, intensive, STEM-focused, out-of-school time programs that are intentionally serving Black, Latina, Indigenous, and other represented racially minoritized high schoolers through practices that center equity and prepare students for undergraduate STEM.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So why is it important? So I know pre-college STEM programs are important. I attended some when I was a kid. My kids, they're not in high school yet, so I wouldn't call them pre-college, but they're in STEM programs. They want to be in more as they go on. So I know personally why it's important, but why is it important for STEM pre-college programs to kind of come together under this STEM Push umbrella?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we bring pre-college STEM programs together as a network, both for professional learning, program improvement, and collective action, as well as to come together to increase visibility and elevate pre-college STEM program experiences in the undergraduate admissions process by doing together what we can't do alone.
And why do we think that the pre-college STEM programs are important for admissions? So, I know if somebody attends, they're learning already. They're hopefully shoring up their skills already. Why do admissions officers have to consider this separately from just their kind of traditional academics and entrance options?
Well, so one part of that includes a little bit of data that we've been collecting as part of our research in the STEM Push network, which is to use National Student Clearinghouse data to track STEM Push program alumni through their post-secondary studies. And preliminary data from that research, from cohorts 1 and 2 of our network, show that over 80% of their Black, Latina, and Indigenous students with National Student Clearinghouse records are enrolling and persisting in STEM undergraduate for at least 1 year. So these students are already demonstrating a continued interest in STEM. And across our programs with enough data, the odds of Black, Latina, and Indigenous participants were more than double the odds of their matched applicants to persist through more than 1 year in STEM in higher education. And so we really underscore that these data seem to demonstrate the future STEM potential of Black, Latina, and Indigenous students who've already participated in a pre-college STEM program. We think admissions should be paying more attention to this.
I guess I'm confused about that. So the programs are high quality. They're helping students get the skills that they need and the experiences they need to be successful in STEM. Why does STEM Push have to actively work to get pre-STEM college programs recognized? Why isn't that just a thing that happens?
So from initial conversations with admissions leaders, they noticed that it can be hard to differentiate STEM-intensive, equity-focused experiences like our STEM Push pre-college programs from pay-to-play research programs or summer camps. And more generally, admissions doesn't consistently and systematically have a way to recognize out-of-school academic experiences. You have your transcript, you have your formal educational experiences communicated, and it's hard to tell what's academic out of school and what's just something a kid participated in for a little bit. And so to address this, we've been working on a variety of things that I'm excited to share with you all. For several years, we've been working with an advisory council of admissions leaders to inform our strategy, and they've partnered with us to create pathways for students from our pre-college STEM programs. One recommendation that they gave us was to create program profiles, which communicate the STEM learning, the culturally sustaining environments, and the program outcomes in accessible format for admissions readers and admissions professionals. And you can find some of those examples coming through in the chat. Additionally, we've been working with several partners in the undergraduate admissions space to elevate our work and push for changes across the admission system. So we're working with NACAC, the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, to share out our progress and connect with strategic partners. We're working with the Common App to explore the application structure itself and how we can better communicate students out of school learning in their application in straightforward ways. And this work has started by including the STEM Push network in the CBO dropdown, which is a part of the Common App, as a way for students to specifically mark their participation in a STEM Push pre-college STEM program. This is important because it's often not clear to admissions, as I mentioned above, that students in our program spend over 100 hours learning and doing STEM. Marking participation in the STEM Push network confers a piece of this context to admissions folks and allows those readers to recognize the intensity and academic nature of this work. And we hope that's just the beginning of the work that we do together with those partners. And then finally, a core piece of our research project is to design and implement a novel accreditation process that recognizes quality pre-college STEM programs toward broadening participation in STEM. So to do this, the parent organization of STEM Push, which is the Broadening Equity in STEM Center, or BSTEM, at the University of Pittsburgh, has been accredited by Middle States Association as a learning services provider. And we're currently working in close partnership with Middle States to develop a novel, equity-centered admissions process based on our STEM Push quality standards. And we have 6 of our pre-college programs currently piloting this for potential accreditation in April of 2024. If this continues on track, we expect several more programs to be accredited by November of 2024 in time for recognition through the 2024-2025 admission cycle. So we look forward to continuing to partner with admissions professionals to recognize and study accreditation's impact on pre-college STEM program impact in the admissions process.
Well, thank you, DeSanne. I think that context is really helpful. And for those of you listening, I know DeSanne will be here. You know, she may jump into some other questions, so she'll certainly be there in the chat. So make sure to use that resource as you have it available to you right now. I also want to point out, because DeSanne mentioned NACAC, and Meredith in chat says the STEM push session at NACAC was one of the 2 best I attended this year. She was disappointed how few people were there, which I think is, you know, I think that's to the point, right? Is why we're having this conversation today. This is really incredible and groundbreaking work, and we need to get that message out. I also wanted to read it because I just look for any opportunity to say NACAC, because it's I think the most fun acronym of all of the acronyms. All right, so we are now going to move on to meeting our panelists. And first up, we're going to meet Gabriela Perez. Gabriela is the program coordinator for the Women in Science and Engineering WISE program at the University of Arizona. With a background in social work and DEI university-based programming, Gabby works to support students in actualizing their multidimensional selves. It's a great phrase. At WISE, Gabby supports mentorship programming both at the University of Arizona and with the Imagine Your STEM Future program in a partnership with a local high school in Tucson, Arizona. Gabby leads a STEM Push pre-college STEM program herself, Imagine Your STEM Future at University of Arizona. So, Gabby, I know as the father of young girls, I always like to take advantage of these opportunities to ask questions that selfishly help me. So I'm curious, you know, what should I be thinking about? What has worked really well in getting young women to really consider these job paths, these career paths, as you've worked with them in these programs? How do we get more women in STEM?
Thank you for having me. That's a great question. I think something that we try to do at Imagine Your STEM Future is really provide like role models and examples, not only of like what woman in STEM looks like, but also what kind of jobs you can have. What does being a scientist mean? And I think that goes beyond your basic math or science. That goes into like, are you an evolutionary biologist? Are you a semiconductor engineer? And really being able to expose people to like what the spectrum of the STEM fields offer, I think is a great way to get people interested. There's not just one way to be within the STEM fields. You can make it multi-dimensional just like yourself, right? And so be encouraging folks also and young students to keep the parts of them that aren't STEM. That makes you you, that makes you special, and you can do both. You don't just have to be your STEM identity.
I love that. Thank you very much for that insight. Up next on the panel, we have Chief Scientific Officer Dr. Latasha Wright. Latasha received her PhD from NYU Medical Center in Cell and Molecular Biology. She continued her scientific training at Johns Hopkins and Weill Cornell Medical Center. She's co-authored numerous publications, presented her work at international and national conferences. BioBus enables Latasha to share her love of science with a new generation of scientists. Latasha spearheaded the creation of the first bio-based community lab, the BioBus internship program, and her Harlem expansion. Every day that Latasha spends teaching students about science in this transformative environment helps her remember that science is fun. She loves sharing the journey of discovery with students of all ages. And Latasha also serves as the New York City ecosystem liaison to STEM Push. Latasha, this is kind of one of my my personal, parenting and in my work sort of focal points is how do we keep science fun? I think sometimes schools have a tendency to sort of crush all of the fun out of science and we ruin our future scientists. So I'm curious what advice you might have for people who run programs that touch and keep science adjacent to really keep that spark of excitement alive in the sciences as they're working with young people from, elementary all the way through college.
Yeah, I think that one thing we all forget is that everybody isn't scientists. Like all kids are doing experiments. When your 3-year-old is asking you, can I get McDonald's? Can I get McDonald's? Can I get McDonald's? They're just asking you they're trying to push the limits. They're asking questions. And that's what science is. I think we try to redefine science as something that is only in a book. I think science is exploration, science is curiosity. Everybody is curious, so we want to make sure that we keep that curiosity going. And I think that you're right, like in schools, people are like, oh, don't ask these questions, but allow the students to always ask questions and to bring no question should be off the table. And allowing them to bring their own voice and being able to ask their questions, like even if this is about like, why is this poop? And like be ready to be in there with the poop talk question. And also, you never know like what it's going to lead to, because they're just so ripe and they have so many things to offer. And I think just allowing the students to lead, and they will show you what they're interested in and being able to follow that.
Thank you for that, Latasha. I'm those of you know me know I'm a dad of a 13, 11-year-old, and then we made a COVID decision, so also a 2-year-old. And I saw this TikTok from Neil deGrasse Tyson yesterday, where he was talking about, your 2-year-old grabs an egg off the shelf, and you like scream like no, and you stop them or whatever, and he says, that's a 35-cent egg. What's going to happen? They're going to drop it, they're going to break it, and they're going to discover that something that's hard can also be fragile. And they're going to discover that, and then you can say, this clear part, if we cook it, it turns white. There's 7 experiments in that 35-cent egg. And instead of, saying, no, don't touch it, let them touch it. Let them break the egg, and let's figure it out. And it sounds like that's kind of your philosophy as well. So I'm excited to learn more from you as we go on. And finally, and not quite here with us yet, we have Amanda Ferber. Amanda's a rising junior at Johns Hopkins University, majoring in computer science and public health. She's a director of community engagement for Baltimore First, a student volunteering and critical reflection organization under the Johns Hopkins Center for Social Concern. She's also conducted epidemiological research at the Center for Health Disparity Solutions at the Bloomberg School of Public Health and Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Her research interests also extend to health information management, machine learning, and the implementation of science of health interventions globally. She hopes to have a highly applied, data-driven career where she spearheads the implementation of empirically supported intervention models in low-resource settings. In her free time, she enjoys taking care of her pet chameleon and singing in choir. She was a participant in the UPMC Hillman Cancer Center Academy pre-college STEM program and STEM Push Network member. Amanda is also very kindly literally running to us from a lecture in her college classes. So she's excused her few minutes late. We knew she was going to be a little bit late, but I wanted to get her bio out there before we started so that we could get in. We're going to get into our conversation now, but before we do, I want to point out and remind everyone just one more time that you've got that little Q&A button down there. Please make sure to put your questions in there as soon as you think of them. And as you see that little number rising, go ahead and hit that little thumbs up button next to any questions that really resonate with you. I also encourage you to please back channel in the chat, talk about what you're seeing, talk about what you're thinking, and have the opportunity to engage with the really incredible STEM Push team, as well as our panelists. So, STEM Push as kind of a research project and a network of pre-college STEM programs aims to increase the number of Black, Latina, Indigenous students in STEM through more students enrolling and persisting in STEM through their undergraduate studies. So I wonder in what ways, Gabby and Latasha, you think pre-college STEM programs are important for developing these STEM skills and experiences? Gabby?
I think the continued interest and prompting that interest in science is really, really important. It's something that definitely I think our pre-college STEM programs are affirming within students. I also think we're really uniquely positioned to offer a lot of information to populations of students who historically don't get that information. And that's really important to give folks access to that information. And like I said earlier, I think something that we focus on within Imagine Your STEM Future is what the spectrum of the STEM fields can offer you, right? Let's have a conversation of what major exploration looks like within the STEM fields. And let's have a conversation of the many ways to get into college. It's not just one 4-year plan. It can be community college. It can be trade school within the STEM workforce and going to college. There are many different pathways. And I think with just the general mainstream conversations about college, they're not really acknowledging the nuances of our populations of students and our populations of future scientists. And so I think our pre-collegiate programs offer a really big opportunity to expose and promote that continued interest within the sciences, because of what we know of just retention rates of underrepresented students in the sciences.
Latasha, is that your experience too? Where do you see the importance lie here?
I agree, but I also think that there's a couple more things that are important. I think that, first of all, science is exploration, and it's about like wins, but a lot of failures. And this is I think the great thing about the pre-college STEM program, it allows the students to fail in this really supportive environment. And it allows the kids to say, oh, it's okay to fail and it's okay. Oh, scientists don't have all of the answers, and be able to understand that it's about asking questions and being a part of the community, and that you don't have to have all of the answers, and that it's not about being inherently smart. It's about asking questions and being curious. Like some kids think that they're not smart enough for the programs. And so that's a part, and some teachers are like, oh, that is not the best student because they don't have the best grades. And sometimes the people who excel better in our pre-college STEM programs aren't the ones that have the highest academic accomplishments. So it's about being able to do the work and being able to have the critical thinking skills and building those things. And those are the skills that are really transferable to all things through the rest of their life. So I think that's why these pre-college STEM programs are super important. And it also allows them to build on their scientific identity. There's like Gabby said, there's not one thing that you could be, but you could be a builder. You could be you could be like a computer programmer, but it's like, what is my identity? How is my scientific identity really evolving in this area? And the other thing is to like make science relevant. Because sometimes kids don't want to be scientists because they are like, it's not what I'm not that Einstein looking person. But if they are able to like look at things in their neighborhoods and being able to like say, hey, the air quality is really bad, the asthma rates is really bad. Let me figure out like something that can do. Maybe I can put on sensors and then we can talk to our elected officials about it. That is something that the pre-college STEM programs can facilitate for them and make science something that is very relevant to them in their community.
And I also see that we have been joined by our third panelist, Amanda. Amanda, I appreciate you running from class. How is class?
It is a machine learning class, and it's going to be a struggle, but we're all in it together, all of us students.
So, so I'm curious. We already heard kind of about your whole bio. Your interests are very broad ranging, in a really great way. You're here, in a machine learning class that you just ran to us from, which I'm sure I wouldn't be able to handle. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit. What we're talking about right now is why STEM pre-college programs are important. And I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how being a participant in STEM pre-college programs helped you or didn't help you in your college career.
I think STEM pre-college programs are important because they expose you to a lot of different aspects of academia and research culture and just like professional work settings in general, and it's just so much different from high school, and it's a great introduction to the kinds of things you might encounter in college, because colleges, in addition to just being like educational institutions, are also a place where research and science is currently ongoing by the and done by the faculty. So I think my pre-college STEM program was a really excellent introduction to what science means and how it happens, and like what are some of the norms that I might come into contact with once I entered college. We got programming such as consistent, like every day we'd have talks from different scientists at the University of Pittsburgh. That's where my college STEM program was. And it was just really great to be in an environment where like a small setting environment where we could feel comfortable asking questions to these scientists, and also like get a sense of what different research topics really look like in an applied setting, because I wouldn't say that the basic science classes that we have in high school were very applied at all. Like we learned about molecules and DNA, but we didn't really know like what are current and important research topics. And I think the applied aspect of pre-college STEM programs is also very, very important.
You know, Amanda, I want to, I warned you all that that I have a tendency to go off plan, and I'm already going to do that right now. Sorry, DeSanne and Allison, but I see, that you introduced yourself, Amanda, by saying, I'm in this machine learning class. Ugh, I don't know. And then I saw that in the chat, Latasha said, listen, everyone has felt like an imposter in classes and in places. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit because, I see that as one of the really critical benefits of something like a pre-college STEM program. When we work with young people, all young people, but in particular, young people of color, of limited means, who will be first-generation college students and so forth, imposter syndrome is a really powerful negative force and can really put a hindrance on things. So, Latasha, I'm hoping that you could first kind of kick us off and talk about that a little bit. Where do you see that in yourself or in students you've worked with, and how do we address it?
Yeah, I think that it's the society, what everybody thinks when you say draw a scientist, when you do the draw the scientist, nobody draws a person of color as a scientist. And they, as their first thing. And it's really hard if you say, hey, name a female scientist or female physicist. People are like, you know what I mean? Because you're thinking, Einstein. And so it doesn't really feel like you are in that same caliber. And so that's why it's important to show role models. It's important to have mentees. It's important for people to see other people who look like them, who are from their same backgrounds that are there. And so it could be so that the students can start seeing themselves as like, oh, this is something I could do. And it's also, I think that it's also really hard to be like the only one that looks like you in a room with other people. And so I think that one good thing about these pre-college STEM programs is that you have these networks, you can bring these alumni, you have a lot of people who are then who not necessarily are in your school, but are all over, and they're coming together, and then you're building this alumni group or this kind of I don't know, the safe space that everybody can be who they want to be and who they want to be and who they could be, where they can start imagining themselves to be this place. And so I think that's important. And that is what helped me sustain in graduate school, is because I was in a pre-college STEM program and I met somebody who lived across the country, but then definitely when we went to grad school together, we kept in touch. And then when I started getting a bunch of microaggressions, I would call them and say, hey, am I crazy? And they were like, no, you're not crazy. That's not right. And being able to validate my feelings was able to allow me to persist in science.
I think it's such an important conversation. And what I love about STEM Push and this whole pre-college push and program is that there are, the big kind of stated goals, the ones that we talked about in the beginning, but it's really also this community opportunity to address all of the little things that bubble up or that weren't maybe intended focus areas, but that we ultimately realize need to be addressed in order to make the change that we want to happen. I know that this process has really been sort of an evolving one. And Gabby, I know the pre-college programs, it seems like kind of a no-brainer. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the ways that you're working with STEM Push to address access and admissions recognition and how that evolution happens and what you've kind of learned along the way that you've had to shift and change.
Yeah, I think by working with the STEM Push Network, they really offer each program a time to intentionally challenge themselves to be better in one specific area. And I think for us, we chose to work on admissions and the relationship that we have with admissions. And for our program being situated within the University of Arizona, we have a very, again, unique opportunity to kind of leverage those relationships based on our proximity. And we were lucky for this improvement cycle and working with STEM Push. We planned a field trip to the College of Engineering. And so that was something that we had already planned to do prior. And so we looked at that as an opportunity of like, how do we really be intentional about providing our students with more information about college, but also kind of strengthening our relationships with admissions in general. So they know our program, they know our students, and kind of follow that work that STEM Push has been doing, right? Getting with the accreditation process, getting our students' work recognized and their participation in this program work recognized. And I think our program is really lucky. I loved what Natasha said about mentorship in the chat too. We bring University of Arizona students to the high school, and having those near peer opportunities for conversation about what does college look like, what does my pathway to college look like, is something that I, as a program coordinator, can't necessarily do. But as someone who's a university student who's already studying physiology, computer science, right? Being able to talk from that perspective has been huge. And so with this opportunity, we planned a workshop with our students that was created and led by our U of A mentors and then brought and implemented into the school. And again, we were really lucky, again, to be intentional about strengthening the things that were already there. So we have an alumni from our program who's now a mentor. She went through the program in high school. Now she's at the U of A. And so we were able to know via her experience what do students want to hear more from, what do students want support with when it comes to thinking about college. She also knew like what students are already getting from the high school, and so being able to fill the void and gaps that students aren't getting has been something that we've really been grateful to participate in through this process. I think something that we really learned is that after the field trip, I got a lot of conversations and comments from the teaching staff and saying like, this was really helpful for me. And I think realizing the void of like what teachers and what's, admin at schools are not getting from college admissions too is also something that like, how are we going to work to better form that relationship? And I think something else that we were able to do was to bring admissions into that field trip and have them offer a Q&A session that went really well. And I think just being able to get in contact with certain people who are like within the College of Engineering, putting a face to an email has been really beneficial for our office in thinking about, okay, so next year, how do we strengthen this relationship even more? How do we create these connections that can go from year to year to year? Like, can we bring students again next year through a different College of Engineering or College of Science? I think we learned a lot, and it was really, really beneficial for us to kind of go through this process with STEM Push.
And I wonder if if you were sort of talking about, Gabby, and you did talk about this in kind of a process sense, but if you're talking about the big takeaway value from being part of STEM Push, what would you say in terms of that improvement? Like, what were the biggest changes that you kind of discovered and effectively implemented because of going through this process?
I think it was really looking at our U of A mentors as leaders and facilitators and really like leaning into their knowledge as well as the students' knowledge, giving them, I think Latasha mentioned earlier, it's really powerful to carve a space out for students to feel safe in and to ask questions that they might be vulnerable asking. And so I think it really challenged us to look at all of our program details and think, where can we get these lessons that we learned from this field trip and implement them throughout all of our programming to make students feel more seen and heard.
Thank you, Gabby. And Latasha, as the New York City ecosystem liaison to STEM Push, you've kind of facilitated really important partnerships between the ex-NYC pre-college STEM program and New York area admissions partners. What can you tell us about the efforts that you're working on with STEM Push to address college access and admissions recognition specifically?
So right now, what we try to do is we have monthly meetings with all of the pre-college STEM programs, and we come together and we talk about issues that we're having. And it's a nice place for people who are facilitating these programs to kind of like share resources. And we talk about like, how can we support our students better? How can we write effective letters of recommendation? And how can we help the students to really talk about our programs better in their Common App? And also one of the other things that we're doing, we meet with admissions people and we try to get tips and tricks that we can then pass on to our students, similar to what Gabby did. But you actually did a better job, but we'll we're still working. And the other thing that we're working on right now is CUNY has this credit for prior learning. So what we're trying to do is trying to figure out how can we have our pre-college STEM programs be a part of that, and we hopefully allow our students to get credit for prior learning through our pre-college STEM programs.
So Amanda, I hope you've caught your breath from running from class. I think you're so key here, and something I love about this particular panel is I can't tell you how many of these I do that are around and about students, and the people I'm doing them with don't put any students on the panel. So I'm so excited that STEMPush found you and put you on this panel because you're what this is all about, really, ultimately, right? This is about you. This work is happening because of the yous of the world. So I'm curious if you can talk about experiences that you maybe have had to share with those listening today that might encourage them to work together. What have you seen that's possible when partners work together to really make tangible change for young people?
Oh, I have just the story to share, I think. So I mentioned earlier that I was in Hillman Academy, and every day they'd have a speaker to talk to us. So like the program director, Dr. David Boone, has a lot of connections throughout University of Pittsburgh, and he invited someone from the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center who is not necessarily immersed in the computational biology aspect like I was, but she was her role was facilitating free breast cancer screening to women who are underinsured or uninsured or can't otherwise afford to have screening. And that one lecture really opened up my eyes to how like a life or death situation can be influenced by one's income level. And I think I didn't think that was fair at all. It was really jarring to realize that in areas that don't have free breast cancer screening, people might not ever have the means to know if they have this really fatal, in some cases, disease. So that one partnership between my program director and the speaker that he invited inspired me to major in public health at Johns Hopkins, where I now go to school. I realized the function that public health has in society. And I realized that was the little intersection between science and the overall well-being of society that I really wanted to ingrain myself into. It's interesting. The experience I had was meant to be computational biology. I was doing a lot of coding in R, attending journal clubs where we'd learn about at the molecular level, how cancer operates in one's body. But I actually, leaving the program, I actually was inspired to go into something in school that's much broader, which is public health. So that was an amazing partnership that has really changed the trajectory. I mean, it's only been around 3 or 4 years since I participated in the program, but it truly did change the trajectory of my life from that point on. And also with other speakers that our program director invited, I felt, I guess, empowered to reach out to them on my own. And that was the first time I really took part in networking and understand what networking was. It seemed like it was this really hand-wavy term that my teachers would sometimes use, but now I realize I could just reach out to anyone that I've been marginally connected to or introduced to in these programs that I've participated in, and talk to them, and they're really eager for me to pick their brain and to talk to them. So communicating with some of the speakers that talked in my summer program actually helped me on my college applications, because at Johns Hopkins, there is a direct matriculation program where you apply for the undergrad and the graduate program. So because I was able to interview some global health speakers, I wrote about those interviews in my essay to the direct matriculation program, and I'm now accepted not only to Johns Hopkins undergrad, but I'll be directly matriculating to the Bloomberg School of Public Health for my graduate degree in public health because of because of what I was able to learn from the speakers from that pre-college program. So now I don't have to worry about applying for grad school.
Thank you for that, Amanda. And I do want to call out as well in the chat that Veronica mentioned, a couple of our panelists have mentioned the phrase improvement science. Gabby just talked about it a second ago as well. And Veronica dropped a link in the chat that has some more information about improvement science. And frankly, even what Amanda was just talking about, even though she didn't use that phrase, that's what we're really talking about here is just kind of finding these little incremental ways to constantly be in improvement. I think we think about like the big leaps, and those big leaps, number one, aren't always the most effective path, and number two, aren't always possible, but we can always be making these tiny, small incremental changes to move towards the things that we know are important. Kind of on that, Latasha, I know that you've been working really hard to further kind of STEM access within the New York City region in the pre-college STEM programs. Man, that can be a mouthful sometimes. The PCSPs in that region. And I wonder what you've found that those organizations have been able to do together collaboratively that they weren't really able to do, or at least not as effectively alone.
I think that it's the power of numbers, being able to show a collective impact, being able to say, hey, 98% of our students persist in STEM. And so this is a thing that I think most of our programs, because they're so intensive, are kind of small. Like we have like 10, maybe other people have 20 or 30. But if we have like 100 people that we can then show, like out of 100 students, like 90% of them are persistent in science, then that we're doing something right. I think that is one of the things is we're able to really accomplish, is being able to collectively come together and also really empower our students to be able to say we're part of this network of students that then we can move together. And another thing is that a lot of those students, there's a lot of cross-pollination. Students go to different programs. They start off in my program, then they can go to another program. So there's a lot of chain mentoring that can occur. And so students can say, oh, I like computer science, but I did it, but I didn't like it. So let me go over here to this other program. Maybe I'll like it better. So there's a lot of ways that then we can see like near peer and also chain mentoring. So it's a lot of places that we can then grow together by just being a collective and a network.
Thank you, Latasha. Your advice has just been on point this whole time. I've been loving learning from all three of you. This is really great. Gabby, I've only really one more question kind of directed towards the three of you, although here in a minute, I'm going to invite DeSanne back on to ask a couple logistical questions. And I invite the three of you to stay up on the screen and connected, and please jump in if you have sort of implementation insights to add on to her answers. But before we do that, Gabby, as a network participant, so you've been entrenched in this network for a while now. How do you see the STEM Push Network working together to do things that you can't do alone?
Yeah, I think with collective numbers and power comes a lot of collective knowledge. So I have been really grateful and honestly overwhelmed of the amount of resources I've been able to access through participation in this program. And I think regionally, like within the Southwest, connecting with folks who are doing similar work is both sustaining and inspiring, but also can come with like some tangible resources, some tangible contacts maybe you've been trying to get in touch with. I think the monthly meetings and just carving out space for this work is really good for accountability. I think it's one thing to have an idea, and it's another thing to really implement it and put the time and work that needs to be done into it. And I think STEM Push has been really supportive in making that jump from A to B of the idea to coming to fruition. So I think just the overall support and access to knowledge and resources has been really invaluable for my program. And there has just been almost so much that I have to carve time out to look through all of them. And it's been great to, connect with other people who are doing similar work and bounce off ideas, get in contact with shared stakeholders, shared mentors and role models. The access to people and their knowledge has been really, really great.
Forgot to unmute. Well, Gabby, Latasha, thank you so much for being here today and also for your work. And Amanda, we really love hearing that student voice. So I can't wait to hear about the rest of your academic journey because it seems like you're not only really going to some incredible places, but that you're going to those places in part because of your participation with the STEM Push program and with the associated pre-college STEM programs. So I'm very excited to follow all three of you. DeSanne, I know we've got a handful of questions that have come through, and I'm hoping that you might pop back on with us and talk for a little bit. And the first one is from Meredith, who had a really great question. I know you answered some of these in the chat a little bit, but I'd like to hear them live a little bit as well. Meredith, are you there with us?
Hi, I am.
Hi, Meredith. How are you doing? Could you ask your question about getting the profiles, in the right places?
Yeah, so mechanically speaking, on the applications, when you're on the reading side, there's certain information that comes through the application from the student, from the high school. And there's some logistical challenges with getting an outside profile, which is what I would call these profiles, actually in front of admissions officers. So it's both an education component, but also then a mechanical component with actually trying to get it in front of them. So I was just sort of curious how and what sorts of progress is being made in that logistical mechanical challenge so that this actually can get in front of them.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Meredith. A piece of that is my understanding is it depends on the admission software that each institution uses and whether those links are easy to access or difficult to access in that reading process. So one piece of this is to better understand that landscape and what options are available. And then to really work with Common App and other folks to hopefully improve the ability to include links to change the structure of the application itself to make it easier for admissions officers to include this kind of information in their considerations without a lot of extra effort, as you mentioned, akin to the way that they already can open an in-school transcript from a student and see what did they learn in their in-school setting. And I think it's important to elevate that a lot of the students we're working with in our pre-college STEM programs come from areas where they systemically have less access to STEM coursework, math prerequisites, and other classes that are indicators of future STEM success for admissions officers. And so what we're hoping to do is to say, hey, there's additional indicators of students' STEM potential and future success that aren't communicated based on what the student does or doesn't have access to in their high school. And we want to make sure those things have more visibility as well. So thanks so much for your question, Meredith.
I think another thing to really consider here is STEM Push is doing this really incredible work broadly, but there are a lot of admissions directors out there and a lot of universities, so it's going to take some time. So while that's happening kind of on that sort of forefront official side, it's also really important just to reach out to those directors within your region or the places where your students are attending college. Many of you, most of you probably live within a STEM ecosystem as one example. And STEM ecosystems bring a whole bunch of people together, including university folks. So that's one way that you could find that pathway. So I would encourage everybody to, while STEM, to support the STEM Push work. We got to keep it going. We need to get it there. But until it's in every university, use your local STEM ecosystem and make sure to use that pathway and that avenue to reach directly to those admissions directors. There's another great question in the chat from Claire Duggan. Claire, are you there with us?
I am here.
Hi, Claire. Could you ask your question?
Hi. Yes. So, I know in terms of the certification process, the application for STEM Push to be able to have your program listed in your, collaborative network. But I'm wondering about the direction STEM Push plans for individual students, because not all programs can potentially become certified because there are IRB issues. There are a number of things that you do ask in the application, and students that may attend another program or series of opportunities, how maybe setting up a process that they could actually document via a portfolio or other things, elements of the experiences that they've had out of school. So if someone could respond what you're thinking in that direction, that would be great.
Thanks so much for your question, Claire. I will elevate again what Latasha shared about her work on credit for prior learning. And Latasha, feel free to jump in and say a little more about that if you'd like.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we're trying to work on is like, so it is portfolio based. So basically what we're going to look at is what does our work mirror mirror in the in the college course, like if it's a methods course or it's a research like a research design course, and then the kids can put together a portfolio and say, hey, this is what we did. And so then they can get those credits for being able, instead of taking that course, they can just use our the pre-college STEM program as that course. And it just kind of validates their work, and also it will give them a little bit of less time that they need to, because they have all these credits, and those credits, once they have them, they're transferable to any other college in CUNY. So that's one of the ways that we're trying to work through that.
Thanks,
Thank you, Claire.
Latasha.
Yeah, and thank you, Claire, for that question. That's it for the questions that we have right now. But I know that DeSanne has some things that she'd like to share. So it feels, DeSanne, like there's so much more that we could possibly cover in this conversation, but we are out of time. So I'm hoping that in real rapid fire style, you might give kind of the quick advice for pre-college STEM programs, college admissions representatives, community leaders responsible for participating partnerships like our ecosystem. What should they be thinking about? What should they be doing? And I suppose also, if they're not already involved in the STEM Push network, how can they become involved?
Thanks so much, Jeremy. So most importantly, for students directly, and in light of the Supreme Court decision limiting race considerations in admissions, it's really important to emphasize that students should continue to apply to the colleges that they want to attend. They should continue to include any parts of themselves and their personal visions that they want to share in their applications. And as far as I am hearing, admissions folks still want to hear from them. They still want to consider those applications, and they still want to know what students are up to. So that's the big and most important takeaway for next steps in this work. For our pre-college STEM programs, we encourage other pre-college STEM programs outside of STEM Push to access some of our network-wide learnings through our published equity-based improvement packages. That link was shared in the chat, and I imagine it'll pop back in just now. And look out there for more resources that'll be coming soon based on the learnings from our network, such as what Gabby has shared with you about Imagine Your STEM Future. At the ecosystem level, we're coming together as a community, and we encourage other ecosystems to do that, to bring visibility to the local STEM learning opportunities in your area. And again, admissions folks want to be included and want to know what pre-college STEM programs are up to. So continuing those conversations, sharing information, and finding pathways for students to be recognized for the academic experiences that they have. And then finally, for all admissions professionals who are here, we want to partner with you and your organization. We would love for you to check out our program profiles and take a look at the map page that'll be shared in the chat to see if there are programs in your area that you'd be particularly interested in connecting with. If you would like a connection to particular pre-college STEM programs, you can reach out to me directly, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with those programs. More generally, you can look out for students who mark the STEM Push network in the CBO dropdown of the Common App to stay in touch with and track those students. We'd love to know if you're following that, what you find, if you're getting pre-college STEM program students in the STEM Push network applying to you, what you're seeing, and how we can improve this whole process. So please do stay in touch. Thank you.
Well, thank you, DeSanne, Latasha, Gabby, Amanda. We really appreciate learning from you all today. Excuse me. And I really love the work of STEM Push. Excuse me. I really love the work of STEM Push, and I'm so excited to see it evolve over the coming years. You can all stay in touch by signing up to receive updates, resources, and information about equity in college admissions and STEM at stempushnetwork.org. You can also follow STEM Push on LinkedIn, Facebook, and the artist formerly known as Twitter. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so happy to have you as part of this network in this world. This is critical work, and I'm excited, I know all of you are, to see some real change and real difference evolve and happen as a result of the work of STEM Push. Thank you, everyone.